Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Seriously Arabic where we learn Quran and its grammar. This session will be about murakkab tawsifi, and this is the term for adjectival phrase which is made by a noun and its description. And I have here this beautiful night scenery which I will describe with bright moon, the tall buildings, sleepy girl and sleepy boy. I know they are marvelous descriptions, but if we have a look at each one of these in turn, we can see that the adjective bright, the tall, sleepy comes first. And then the word that is being described comes second. That is in English. And the word that is being described in Arabic is called the mousuf, and the adjective is termed as siffah. So in English, the adjective is always first and the noun is second. The other thing we can notice is that we have a plural word which is buildings and a singular word which is moon, but despite this the adjective is still the same. We don't say brights, moons, and we don't say the talls, buildings. Is still the same. So the adjective doesn't change regardless of the number. And the other thing to notice is that despite the change in gender for the sleepy girl and the sleepy boy, the adjective still doesn't change, which means that in English adjectives remain the same for both masculine and feminine words. Now let's see how that compares to in Arabic. I have translated all of these sentences and phrases in Arabic so we can see how they differ. So to analyze this, we first need to be looking at their four properties. So if I look at this, Qamarul Lami'un, which means bright moon, let's see the four properties. What are the four properties of Qamarun? Qamarun is Rafa, is also singular, so I'll write the number 1. As well as that, it is masculine, and the last property is indefinite. Now let's see the property of Lami'un. This one is Rafa, this one's also singular, this one's also masculine because there's no sign of femininity, and is also indefinite because it has nothing that can prove it to be definite. Let's look at the second phrase, which is al-binayatul aliyatu, which is tall, the tall buildings. We have the word al-binaya, which is rafa. This is a ghair akil feminine plural, which means that we can either treat it as feminine plural or we can treat it as feminine singular. So we have both options, and it's definite because of the alif lam. Now the word aliyatu, which is the siffah, is also in the state of rafa and is singular feminine. So we haven't used this form, we have used this one over here, and this also has alif lam, which is definite. Okay, so we have started seeing a pattern, and that is the fact that all four properties of these mousuf and the siffah, they match. So let's see the third example as well. We have fatatun nasi'atun. Fatatun is again a rafa. It is feminine singular, feminine because of the tamarbuta, and it is indefinite because it has the tanween. Then nasi'atun, which is the siffah, is also rafa. It is feminine singular and indefinite. So even here the four properties match. Let's have a look at the next one, which is a sleepy boy. Waladun is rafa. It is masculine, singular and indefinite, and as you probably guessed, the adjective is also the same. So from here we have pretty much figured it out for mousuf siffah. The rules are, number 1 is that the mousuf, let's explain this properly. Mousuf is the word being described. You have the siffah, which is your adjective. Now on to the actual rules. For a mousuf and the siffah, for a murakkab tawsifi to be considered an actual correct murakkab tawsifi, all four properties of both isms must match, the same way we have seen in the examples. Now the fourth rule is that the mousuf is always first and the siffah is always second. And lastly, number 5, we haven't seen that in the example, but other words can come in between the mousuf and the siffah. Whereas, for example, for a murakkabi idafi and a jar majroor, that can happen. The mudaf and the mudaf ilay, jar majroor, they have to be together. They don't like being far away from each other. As for the inna and the other huruf mushabbahatu bil fa'al and their ism and the موصوف and its siffah, they can have some distance between them. The last no is that just because the موصوف is always first, when we translate it doesn't mean we're going to say moon bright. We're still going to say bright moon because this is how our language English works. And with that said, we conclude with the theory, and I have prepared a lot of practice for us to do. So we need to determine if these phrases or sentences are a murakkab tawsifi or if there's something else. So the number one, inna mathala Isa. Inna is huruf mushabbahatu bil fa'al. Then we have a word that is light with no alif lam. Now when we see light with no alif lam in our head, mudaf should be the first thing we think of. And then we have Isa, which is partly flexible, which means that it could be in halated jar. And we said that if it could be, then it probably is, which means that this is an idafa, so we can completely scrap the idea that it is an adjectival phrase. But if we didn't want to think about it as an idafa structure, we see that mathala is indefinite and then Isa is definite because it's a proper noun. So already the properties don't match, so this is not it. Sihrun mubin. Sihrun is Rafa, is masculine, is singular, and it's indefinite. And mubin is the same, which means the sihrun is the موصوف and mubin is the siffah. Hayatun ad-dunya. The word hayat is light with no alif lam. So this is a mudaf, and in fact it's a word that has a zamir attached to, which means that the zamir is mudaf ilay. And then ad-dunya, let's look at the word dunya. Can this be a sifa for hayat? Because remember that موصوف sifa, they don't have to be next to each other. In this case, if this is an adjectival phrase, it's separated by aina. So let's see the four properties of hayat, which are rafa, singular, feminine, and it is definite because the dhamir is definite, which means that the mudaf is also going to be definite. Now ad-dunya is definite, is also rafa, and it's singular. Now is it feminine? A word that is feminine is either a broken plural or it has a ta marbuta, alif mamduda, ya maqsura, alif maqsura. And this, even though it might not look like it, this word is actually feminine because of the alif maqsura. So originally it was dunya and it had two yas together, and the Arabs didn't like that, so they just converted that into an alif. So this is actually feminine. The properties do match, which means that this is a sifa for the word haya. And this means our worldly life. And a sihr mubin means clear magic, a clear magic. And then inna mathala Isa is undoubtedly the example of Isa. Now next set of phrases, we have kutubun qayyimatun. Kutubun, let's see the properties of this one. Kutubun is a feminine broken plural that is ghair akil, it's not human, it's not intelligent, so it's going to be treated as a she. So that's singular feminine, as well as that is rafa. And is it definite? No, it's indefinite. And the word qayyimatun is also singular feminine, is also rafa, and is also indefinite. So kutubun is the موصوف and qayyimatun is the sifa. So when you're translating this, you put the sifa first. I think qayyima means upright. Kutubun means books. Yeah, so qayyima is books that don't have any errors in it, and it refers to the scriptures that the angels are writing on our shoulders. We have hadithul junud, light with no alif lam, and the next word is majroor. This is an idafa structure, definitely not an idafa, definitely not موصوف sifa. Then we have ila yawmil qiyamah. Ila is huruf al-jar. Yawmil qiyamah, this is a mudaf and a mudaf ilayh. And then that all becomes the majroor. This is not a tawsifi. However, if we translate it, it does mean to ila yawmil qiyamah, to, or well, until the day of judgment. The next set is إنه كان عبدا شكورا. إن is حروف مشبهة بالفعل and who is the اسم إن. Okay, indeed he. كان, we haven't come across that yet. Now let's have a look at the here عبدا شكورا. عبدا is singular, it's rafa, it's indefinite and is also masculine, and shakuran is also the same, which means that this is موصوف and this is siffah. So this part over here we translate it as grateful slave, referring to Nuh alayhi salam. Then we have ala kulli shay'in qadir. Ala is jar. Then kulli, this is a special mudaf. So this is going to be a mudaf. And shay'in is the mudaf ilayhi. And then qadiru, it doesn't seem to be anything in this sentence, which means that this is not a tawsifi and we can just leave it at that. Rabbil Alameen is an idafa structure because we have light, no alif lam, and the next word is in halat jar. It means Lord of the universe. We're going to be doing the tarkeeb of ayah number 19 and 20 of Surah Takwir because it has a lot of things that we have covered so far. So we're actually totally able to do this with the knowledge that we have acquired. So don't panic and try your best to do this. I am going to say that this isn't just a straightforward or this is mudaf ilayh. These are all the compounds and the phrases that we have learned like mixed together. Pause here and try this yourself. إنه, we have إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين. Inna is your حروف مشبهة بالفعل. La, this la, we haven't come across this yet, but it's a la for emphasis. This is not la huruf al-jar because la huruf al-jar would give qawlu a e sound, but it has an u sound. So qawlu, light with no alif lam, so this is obviously mudaf because the next word is majroor, so definitely this is a mudaf, and rasulin is the mudaf ilay of qawlu. Now before we write a mudaf ilay here, we have to figure out if this could have a siffah. Now Rasul is singular, it's jar, it's indefinite, and it's also masculine. Have the word Kareem. Now this ka is not ka for huruf jar because Kareemun is an actual word, so this ka is part of the word. However, this word is in halat jar because it's the siffah for Rasul. All the properties match with the properties of Rasul, so this is siffah, which means that Rasul is going to be the موصوف. Okay, we have ذي قوة. ذي is also a special mudaf that we haven't mentioned, but when you see a ذي in the Quran, it's always mudaf, and it's also like with no alif lam, and the word after is majroor, so definitely that is the case. Now to know the overall properties of an idafa structure, you take the properties of this mudaf. So if we have a look at the properties of this mudaf, this is in halat jar. The rafa version of the is dhu, and the nasab version of the is that, and then the is in halat jar. So the is in halat jar is also always singular, and the is always masculine as well. And is it definite or indefinite? Now that depends on the mudaf ilay, and this mudaf ilay is nakira, which means that the is also indefinite. Now this, the property of the mudaf matches with the property of rasul, which means that ذي قوة is actually a siffah for rasul, which means that we can write this, and it's the siffah number 2, and this is the siffah number 1, so we are going to label it as that. So now inda is another special mudaf that we have learned. So we're going to have a mudaf, and afterwards we're going to obviously have a mudaf ilay. Now dhil arshida again is a mudaf and mudaf ilay on its own. So we have this mudaf and this mudaf ilay, which becomes the complex mudaf ilayhi for the word inda. Now mudaf and mudaf ilay, they later on become something else that we haven't learned yet. Now makin, let's figure out the properties of makin. Makin is in halat jar, is indefinite, is masculine, and is singular, which means that this is also the siffah for rasul, and in fact this is the siffah number 3. Now this mousuf and its siffah 1, siffah 2, and siffah 3, they all going to be joining together to make the mudaf ilay. موصوف siffah, all joins together to make the mudaf and the mudaf ilay. Oh, I forgot that who is the ismul in. And this is the most that we have learned so far for this. And that's good enough for us to actually start translating this. So innahu, this is the end of the first fragment that we have learned. This is one whole complex, really complex fragment. This is still not a full sentence, but this whole thing, this whole two verses together, it is a full sentence because we put the is after the ismul inna. So we have innahu, verily it is. So who is it? And it refers to the Quran. So we can say undoubtedly it, meaning the Quran. Laqawlu, it is certainly qawlu rasulin, the speech or a speech of one of the speech of a messenger. And now all the description of the messenger are going to come. Karimun, karimin, which is noble. We should put in here really, which is the speech of a noble messenger. Dhi quwwatin, dhi means owner, quwwatin is strength, owner of strength or possessor of strength. Now inda means at, by, with, so we can say by dhil arsh, by the owner of the throne, and the owner of the throne is Allah Azza wa Jal, owner of strength. And then we have makin, which means high status, or it can mean secure. So at the end we can translate it as owner of strength and high status. The meaning of end is not practically physically there in the ayah, but we can establish it because otherwise we won't be able to make sense of the phrase or the sentence. And high status by the Lord of the throne, by the possessor of the throne. And this is referring to Jibril alayhi salam, who can go as far as right by the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal, but he can't proceed further, whereas the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he managed to go beyond that point when he went to Isra wal Mi'raj. And that concludes the whole practice for today. Make sure you're able to recognize the mousuf siffah, the idafa structure, and that you're also able to recognize jar majrur and the huruf mushabbahatu bil fa'il and their ism. And tomorrow we're going to be doing our last fragment. So keep working hard and I'll see you inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Cambierà con l'amore riuscirò a spegnere il male che c'è qui, che non può più dividerci.